Hello, I'm Hope Katz Gibbs, creator of the Inkandescent Radio Network, here with my friend and colleague, Tony Farmer, host of the Black Lives Matter radio show. We are thrilled you are here with us today, so let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Black Lives Matter radio show. I'm Tony Farmer, your host. With me is Ms. Hope Katz Gibbs, the president and founder of the Inkandescent Group and creator of Inkandescent Radio. Hope, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here with you, Tony, because together we're launching this radio show designed to shine a light on people with important thoughts, insights, and ideas about the Black Lives Matter movement, which has taken the country and the world by storm, just in time for the coronavirus, or in tandem with, or because of, or something magical is happening. And it's with great pleasure that here, it's August of 2020, that we launched this radio show. And I'm thrilled to sit with you and talk to leaders from around the US, perhaps the world, discuss challenges and share their personal stories and experiences so we can all learn together. Honestly, as a white woman who has been blessed and privileged my whole life, I can't say that I have any idea what it's like to go through the world as you have and millions of others. But I can tell you that what it's like to go through the world as a woman and a Jewish woman. And I think we all face challenges, not to say that they're the same, but what I want to do with this radio show, and, you know, when you and I connected in 2016, was it?
Yeah, thereabouts. It's been a while now.
It has. And, you know, we've talked millions of times, thankfully, and you've guided me, and we've worked together on Inkandescent to help it grow. Mm-hmm. And so here we are with this, at this moment in time, with this opportunity. So I am really thrilled for you to be the host, and I'm just sitting back here as your co-host, you know, perhaps jumping in with some questions, but we're going to interview some really amazing people. July 2020 was the Black Lives Matter issue of our two magazines that we have launched so far, Inkandescent Health and Wellness magazine at beincandescent.com and Inkandescent Women. And in those two issues, I had the opportunity to interview more than a dozen men and women who really just giving them a platform to share their stories and raise their voice. That's all that Inkandescent is about. We shine the light on other people. So I invite you to take it away. Tell us, first of all, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background. How did you get to this interview tonight? Wherever you, but tell us about your journey.
Wow. So my journey starts in Frankfurt, Germany. My father was a serviceman. He was a soldier for over 20 years. And so I was a world traveler before I could walk. And we came back to the States, and through a series of different duty stations, we landed in Washington, D.C. So Washington, D.C. is my home. It is really the only home that I've ever known. I love to travel, but D.C. is home. My mother's still there, as a matter of fact, so I get to visit every now and again, and not as much since Corona has reared its ugly and interesting head. But my homestead is Washington, D.C. I got married in 1997 and moved to Centerville, Virginia, which is about 45 miles west of the city. So in doing so, I have lived the inner city urban experience, and now I have been blessed to live the suburban experience. And my life's work has been, to this point, making connections. You know, by trade craft, I am a human resources professional. But more than that, I am a life coach and a leadership coach. And so those things, all of those things combined, have given me the skills and the tools to be able to have dialogue. And that's what I seek to do during our interviews and as we embark on this experience together. So you and I met some time ago. There was an instant connection, an instant chemistry, a lot of like interests, and it's been fascinating. It's been a fun ride, just kind of walking side by side with each other through life experiences and coaching each other. And I'm so honored and pleased to be able to give some insight and, again, create a space where people can have dialogue authentically about what's going on throughout the nation, and hopefully at the end of the day give people a voice that they can join with other voices so that if nothing else, they can be heard and others can be positioned to understand. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. And as we move forward, the way I'd like to do this initially, you and I've kind of talked about this, is the most comfortable way for us to kind of start this dialogue is for us to do this in interview form. And you and I have been talking long enough and we've gotten to know each other well enough that you can bring certain things out of me that I may not necessarily think of. Those things may not be on the forefront of my mind. I am a writer of sorts, so every now and again I'll write what I'm thinking and write what I'm feeling, and sometimes that takes a lot of soul searching, and I uncover some things. And I have you to thank for challenging me to really dig deeper into that skill set and dig deeper into my emotional well to pull out some things and offer them for people to think about. So I'm going to kick it over to you to kind of help us bridge this dialogue and get us started here.
Well, to that point that you just made, the essay that you wrote to kick this off is called Quiet Rage, which I just love because it's so it's so reflective of your work as a life coach and as a deacon and a father of two beautiful teenage girls and a husband for decades, just really talking about being where you are in your life. So talk a little bit about what inspired that story. It's on Inkandescent Radio, on the radio show. It's also on our Inkandescent Health and Wellness magazine in the July issue. And we're going to keep promoting what we're doing on these issues so that more of our readers and viewers and listeners can be part of this dialogue. So tell us about Quiet Rage.
Quiet Rage was a composition that was born out of me trying to get my head wrapped around how I felt about some of the things that have been going on over the last 120 days. Specifically, those things those events that sparked the Black Lives Matter movement. One was the death of Ahmaud Arbery, the second being the death of Breonna Taylor, and the third being the death of George Floyd. And the George Floyd death was really magnified in a different way because of COVID, because of the fact that we were quarantined, and it was almost a situation where we were forced to look at something that we traditionally and historically we were aware of as a country, but this was really in your face and magnified in a lot of different ways. So personally, I was trying to deal with how I was feeling, the emotion that it evoked within me, and then trying to think about how I could use some of my experiences to bring about a positive solution to moving forward. So Quiet Rage was both cathartic because it allowed me to dig through some feelings that I had suppressed. It allowed me to express myself in an emotional way, but it also allowed me to collect my thoughts around how I would want to move forward with a solution. So again, as I've mentioned, and one of the things that's so important to me is to be able to talk things out, to exchange perspectives, to seek understanding, and to, for lack of a better word, establish cultural competence. And I think those are the things that are most important when we're talking about unifying, people who are from different backgrounds.
Yeah, so amazing. And the way you wrote that story, it just really, it was poetic, and also I think it got to the heart of it for someone who is living in this culture and has been, and how you've made it work, but yet your perspective. And that's really what we're going to try and bring out in this show, let people come on and talk about their experiences. And when I had the opportunity to interview those dozen plus people in the two magazines in July, I really wanted to hear what they thought. And it's so interesting what these different Black and African Americans had to say about their experience here and what they want people to know. And it gets really muddy and conflicted. I was actually at a conference a year ago, March, a whole year before this whole thing got sparked. And it was the Circle Way conference, where a Circle Way is where you sit in a circle. There's a circle keeper and everyone, it's courageous communication. And these amazingly beautiful, brilliant Black women were there, and they were so furious. No one was prepared for this, and there was nothing that we could say, you know.
Right.
To say something was inappropriate, to not say something was inappropriate.
Mm.
And it struck me as, wow. And here we are a year or so later, year and a half almost, and it's so present. So that's why I want to just sit back and let you take center stage and talk about this with these other people. And I'm, like I said, I may have some questions, but you know, one of the things that I want to also have us talk about in the introductory interview that we're doing now is, you told me, you know, one of the lessons your mom taught you when you're a little boy was, you know, pick up a stick. Tell us about that. Tell us about that experience, because, you know, that's relatively unique and not unique. And so.
Well, as you can imagine, as you probably are unable to imagine, living in an urban area, living in an urban neighborhood, an inner city, most people refer to it as, there is the law of, let's call it the survival of the fittest, right? And so my mother grew up in DC. She grew up in Adams Morgan. And my mother has survived so many things over the course of her life. And even, you know, since I've been born, there are so many things that I've watched her overcome and conquer. And so, you know, imagine, you know, a young man who is, you know, in the 4th or 5th grade, who's brand new to a neighborhood and an environment that he's never seen or experienced before. And he's the stranger, he's the new kid on the block, and the reception is not good. You know, there's no welcome wagon. There's nobody there to show him the ropes. He's been thrown into the deep end, and he's trying to figure out this new urban existence, right? Again, having traveled, you know, all over the world in a number of different duty stations and being exposed to a very diverse group of people, now to be put in a predominantly African-American setting and being asked to survive. So one of my experiences was on my way home from school, again, the new kid, nobody really knows me, I don't have any friends yet, and a group of boys decided that they were going to take the opportunity to make an example of the new guy. And so there was maybe 7 or 8 of these young men, and they decided they were going to, you know, give me a couple of shiners and a couple of bruises between the time I left school and got home. So I got home, you know, I'm telling my mother about what happened. I'm crying, I'm upset, you know, I'm bloodied, I'm kind of messed up. And so I'm telling her the story, and she's being very consoling, and she starts to speak in a very calm and soothing voice. And she says to me, "Now, Tony, the next time this happens, I want you to start looking on the ground." I'm wondering where are we going with this? You know, I'm expecting go talk to your teacher or go get a principal or, you know, look for the police officer resource guy. But no, she says, look on the ground. And she said, you should be able to find a stick or a brick or a bottle or something. And the next time this happens, I want you to grab said object and I want you to swing as hard as you can at the person closest to you. And so I realized that at that moment, what she was telling me was, what she was trying to convey to me was that I had to learn how to stand up for myself. I had to learn how to fight. I had to learn how to stand my ground. I had to learn how to take ownership of my personal space. And in doing that, if I had to do that, you know, at the behest of somebody else who was trying to invade that space, then so be it. And so there are many things that I learned from those experiences, just in terms of how to be very cognizant of my environment. I tell my children today, always have your head on a swivel. And the impetus of that statement is to make sure you are clear on what's surrounding you, what's coming towards you, what's gone past you. I'm one of those people, when I go into a restaurant, I'm looking for exit points. I'm looking for, how you can go out, emergency exits. And so that's just one experience that I can share with you that really taught me the value of understanding and protecting and standing up for what I believe in and appreciating my own value.
Wow. And there's a whole lot there to talk about and unpack, because that's amazing and intense, and you're not alone, right? And how you've handled that through your life. I want to ask you because I do want to ask you how that's impacted you as an adult. But I want to ask you about your girls again. Tell us a little bit about your daughters and how you've raised them so that they have that personal power.
Well, it's so funny. I think there are a lot of African American parents who maybe started in one area of their life and landed in another area of their life, and it's something that I know a lot of comedians I've heard talk about. But my kids are not city kids. They are suburban kids, and so sometimes it's a little difficult to try to translate my experiences in a way that helps them understand what they need to do to reach their goals and strive for their goals and protect their personal space and be hyper aware. So one of the things that I've done with my daughters is I have tried to explain to them that there's a standard. Their mother and I have a standard of expectation. And the people that they encounter, the people that they hang out with, the people that whose lives they impact and they're intertwined with, have to be aware of that standard as well. And if those people in their lives are not meeting that standard, then they have to move on and find other people who are willing to meet the standard, because the standard is something that is going to protect them. The standard is something that's going to help them progress in life. The standard is something that's going to help them get the most out of their own skills and abilities. And so that standard really stems from be aware, do your best always, be honest, truthful, and moral, rely on your faith and those principles that mom and dad have tried to teach you. And then most of all, stand up for what you believe in, and don't be persuaded by people or influences that don't meet the standard.
Yeah, and I think that, every parent wants to teach that to their child. But so given how you grew up and what you believe in, how you're raising your kids, how has this translated in your personal life?
There are two elements of my personality, two elements of my existence that are very important to me and have really been the foundation of my success. The first element is just curiosity, unabashed curiosity. Now, the reason why that's important is because when I encounter certain things, certain people, things that people say, and trying to decipher what the intent is and how I should react, I always start with, well, I wonder what I did to cause that type of response to me. So if somebody says something that I think is ignorant, or somebody says something out of lack of knowledge, or if somebody even says something that I might perceive as racist, my first introspection is me. What did I do? How did I show up to invoke that response? So unabashed curiosity, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. The other element of who I am is really servant. So in order to be a servant, in my purview, you have to be somebody who is willing to be understanding of people, forgiving. You have to always be seeking to understand what people need, what their needs are. You have to be able to listen intently to what they're not saying as well as what they are saying. And so the curiosity and the servanthood really create somebody who seeks to create bridges of communication, right? Sometimes people will say something to me, and I will really think about how I'm perceiving it and why I'm perceiving it the way I'm perceiving it, versus reacting to what's been said. That's the difference between me and a lot of people that I know who have traveled in the same track that I have. And so the advantage for me, particularly as an African American man, is that I am a person who is not reactive. Now, there are situations where I have to respond, right? There are situations where there has to be some communication to establish, okay, I have done enough to earn respect, right? I have done enough to earn the rights that have been afforded to me. So even in those cases, if I feel like that respect is being infringed upon or my rights are being infringed upon, I'm still very introspective, and I'm still cognizant that I have to process before I respond. So it really creates a mindset where instead of being reactive, right, I'm introspective and then responsive. That's kind of what is created as a professional and as a person who seeks to serve other people.
It's amazing and powerful, right? And there's a power to this. And anyone who's been challenged through their lives, either they have choices, right? They can come out strong or they can come out not strong, right? So I guess that's really how, those are the questions that we're going to ask all of the leaders that we're speaking with. And this is a perfect way to end our first interview, although I could talk to you 4 hours. I'll just some of the topics that you've shared with me that I want to share with our audience is, how did we get here, and where can and will we go from here as a society, as different cultures, those rules of the streets. I think that we should definitely ask that of all of them. What were the rules they grew up with, And then something else that you talked to me about in the coaching work you do, especially around women and some others, is do you have a poverty mentality? And can you shift it, right? And then also another thing that I really want us to talk about is that transition of power, right? So that was the thing that confused me last spring when I like, what is it that, what's the goal, right? Because, part of it was like, oh, white people just need to step back and let us take control. And I'm like, I'm not saying that happening, right? And, like, look at the government we have now, and just, we're not seeing anybody letting go of anything. It's really, it's just fight to the death. So,
well, if you think about one of the things that I've been trying to communicate to people who have stepped forward and wanted to be allies, or stepped forward and just wanted to try to understand, those people who have called me who've said, Tony, I don't understand where the anger comes from. I'm really confused. I want to have the conversation, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. The one thing that I would say is that a lot of the anger that African Americans feel during situations and events like we're dealing with now with the Black Lives Matter movement can be compared to nerves, right? So nerves have, really sensitive endings that transmit pain, right? That transmit sensation, in fact. And so if you can imagine, the African American person who has tried to suppress that pain and establish a threshold at which they can function with pain. So you've got these hypersensitive nerve endings that have been set in place by historical events that have happened and no justice being recognized, right? So somebody's killed in their own home, minding their own business, and the person who killed them, who just, they just so happen to wear a badge or, have, law enforcement credentials, nothing happens. And so that starts to grate on those nerve endings, right? Now, I've got to go to work. I've got to provide for my family. I've got to continue business. If I'm a business person, I've got to continue to do all of the things that have fall within my purview of responsibility. But that pain is felt and it never goes away, and it's never really healed because the the wheels of justice sometimes work so slow. And then so another event happens, and there's no justice. And then another event happens, and then there's no justice. And so what you have is these complexities that are caused by pain. And when you try to verbalize those things or articulate those things, they come out as rage, And for people who've never experienced what it is to be discriminated against, or people who've never experienced what, social injustice, or people who have the luxury of not paying attention, not having to pay attention to it, it's a little troubling, right? It's hard to imagine that I feel these things so intensely and I note them, right? They are scars that I feel, even though they didn't happen to me personally. It's hard to imagine that nobody else saw it going on. So the anger is, oh my gosh, I'm hurting. I've been hurting. Nobody's doing anything about the hurt. The hurt is getting worse. And then I have to relive the pain, right? And so now it's, how can you have been around me? How can you have known me? How can you have seen all the things that I've seen in the media and, again, historically, and not known that I was in pain? And part of that is because we, African Americans, particularly in the professional realm, have done such a good job of suppressing the pain. Nobody talks about it, and nobody asks about it. And so, for this reason, mental health has become an issue in the African American community, and preventable diseases have become an issue, because all of these things, when they're internalized, cause other health issues, other, mental issues. And so now when when something like this happens, and, there's a movement that's created and there's opportunities to have the conversation, it's just very difficult sometimes for the African American to express themselves in a way that can be understood, clearly communicated, and give enough information on how somebody can help.
Well, that's what we're at least having the conversation.
Yes.
We're losing the light here in New Mexico, and I don't want to take this, but I'm really excited about this. And we'll finish by, I'll just say some of the folks that we're hoping to interview or planning to interview, including Dre Gardner, creator of the really powerful yoga program called Silent Savasana in Las Vegas. Dre's parents were Black Panthers. His daughter is like the spokesmodel for this really savvy, sexy LA shorts company, and he's just really cool. I got to meet him when I was in Las Vegas a few months ago. We'll also speak with Reggie Smith, Executive Director of the U.S. Distance Learning Association. I've worked with, I'm a member of that organization, and you're going to love interviewing Reggie, because he always says, people give me a hard time. They're just jealous. So I love his.
I'm looking forward to meeting Reggie. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody on our list. And we have a really exciting list of people that we've accumulated, and I am excited to be able to talk to them and start to bring some insights from different, backgrounds on this particular issue.
Yeah. Brain researcher in New York who was telling me she was pregnant a few months ago and walking through her new neighborhood. She just moved with her husband to Westchester in upstate in New York, and a deer passed, so she paused, and a man came out of his fancy, beautiful house, and she thought, is he going to call the police on me because I'm a Black woman sitting here in a raincoat, and I thought, this woman's a brain researcher. She has a PhD. Yeah. She's, so sophisticated. And that's a thought that goes through her mind. She's pregnant. And like that's foreign to me, And so that's Colette. And we'll also talk with Bell Hooks, hopefully, and Susie Love, a Swedish rock star who was getting her PhD in education. Sadiq Shabazz, a former NHL player. We're just an NFL player. We're just going to have so much fun. So
we're going to have a lot of fun. Very much looking forward to it.
Me too. So I'm Hope Katz Gibbs, founder of the Inkandescent Group and Inkandescent Radio and Inkandescent TV, all things incandescent. Here with the fabulous Tony Farmer in DC, who is going to be the host of the Black Lives Matter radio show at blacklivesmatterradioshow.com.
Very much looking forward to it.
Awesome. So thank you. We'll look forward to having this conversation. Our goal is to do it once a week on Saturdays. So tune in. We're going to do some of them live, but they'll all be recorded and on inkandescentradio.com. So thank you for spending some time with us, for meeting me, and especially Tony, who shares so beautifully his story and his philosophy. So we look forward to talking to you soon. Have an incandescent evening.
Take care.
So that's all for today's episode of the Black Lives Matter radio show on inkandescentradio.com. We have an amazing lineup of future guests, just like you heard on today's show. So be sure to tune in for another episode and tell your friends about us so they can listen too. If you or someone you know should be a guest on our show, send me an email, hopekatzgibbs@gmail.com, and we'll be in touch. Again, this is blacklivesmatterradioshow.com on the Inkandescent Radio Network. We look forward to talking to you. Until then, stay safe and be well.